Okay.
So thank you all for participating on this event. This is a live broadcast from the Confederação Nacional da Indústria, or in English, the National Industry Confederation of Brazil, and of its movement, the Entrepreneurial Mobilization for Innovation, MPI, or Mobilização Empresarial pela Inovação in Portuguese. On this event today, we chose the topic, why investments in innovation will be so important in the post-pandemic time. And we'll try with that to learn from global leaders. For that, we have a distinguished panel of speakers, including Frederico Ri. He's the Director of Acceleration and Technology at CERN, one of the largest, if not the largest, enterprise, scientific and technological enterprise in the world. We also have as our guest Jussi Manninen. He's the Executive Vice President of VTT from Finland. And finally, we have a Brazilian guest, Antônio José Roque. He's the Director General at CENEPEM, or in Portuguese, Centro Nacional de Pesquisa em Energias e Materiais, and that's again one of the largest laboratories, if not the largest public laboratories we have in the country. I'm hosting this session as the moderator, and I'm currently, since April 27th, the Scientific Director of FAPESP. FAPESP, again going in English, is the São Paulo Research Foundation. It is a public foundation funded by the taxpayer in the state of São Paulo, with the mission to support research projects in higher education and research institutions in all fields of knowledge. São Paulo has a population of 40 million inhabitants, and it generates about 32% of Brazil's GNP. The Constitution of the state of São Paulo established that 1% of all state taxes belong to the foundation, and the government transfers these funds monthly. The stability of the funding and the autonomy of the foundation allows for an efficient management of the resources that has a sizable impact. While São Paulo has 22% of Brazilian population, 30% of the scientists with a doctorate in the country, and the state then responds to 40% of the country's scientific article published in international journals. In the current pandemic, FAPESP has led a number of initiatives, including initiatives in open science and also requests for proposals with 30 million reais in funding. And that was not only for scientific endeavors, but also for startups and innovative proposals from different companies. One of those companies that had already had approval before from FAPESP and also has been funded in this initiative is MagnaMed. MagnaMed is one of the best cases of success our PIP, or the Pesquisa Inovativa em Pequenas Empresas, small enterprise innovative research, has had. MagnaMed sells to a number of different countries, and it produces respirators or ventilators, which were in shortage recently around the globe. Its capability on producing that type of equipment has led to a contract for producing 6,500 units of respirators for the federal government, with a contract of over 200 million reais, and that would be around 40 million US. So a sizable contract for a company that was recently a startup, and it's growing a lot. FAPESP, of course, has to look for long-term research and long-term activities, and so a number of our projects, including for COVID, they are not likely to provide responses for the short term. Their responses, their results are much more likely to influence and to contribute for the combat for the next pandemic. Definitely, this our moment, our scenario, that COVID is what the challenge we're facing now. But for sure, in the next 5 years or 10 years, there will be another pandemic, and we should be ready for that. And it's the long-term research that is being funded by our agencies that will also contribute to solving the future problem. So with that opening statement, I will go now with question 1. And it goes as follows. The COVID pandemic raised unparalleled changes to the whole society. How did your institutions react to this crisis? And in which sense the public and private investments made along the past decades allowed you to rapidly come up with solutions? And I'll ask first Jussi, and then Frederic, and then Jose Roque to answer.
All right, thank you, Luis. Greetings from Helsinki, Finland. VTT, just a few words. We are the Technical Research Center of Finland, about 2,000 people, so fairly sort of medium-sized research institute working on applied research. And basically what happened in March, there were two things. First of all, ourselves, we sort of tried to make sure that all our laboratories will be working even throughout the crisis. So we sent everybody who could do remote working, we sent everybody home. And so, for example, myself, I've been working from home since mid-March, and we'll be returning back to the office hopefully in September. What we then did for the government, we were actually, there were certain sort of research or testing activities that we've done over the years that were very useful during the crisis. One was looking at the performance of respiratory protection masks. So being able to see whether they actually fulfill the required criteria, and also for the surgical masks. We also started very quickly to help the government around how to actually start building the capacity in Finland to start producing personal protective equipment. So gowns, masks, etc. So we helped the government to come up with, to work with the companies in order to start building the required capacity and also finding the partners. And that's something that's already bear fruition, since we already now have the production in place in Finland. We also be working on, we do some research on medtech. So we're also working on a rapid test together with some partners in the companies and also with the universities in order to get a sort of rapid test on the market. As a sort of a more of a long-term work that we're also doing now, which is sort of a less immediate, but I guess it's playing for the next, as you were saying, that this will definitely not be the last of the waves, is looking at how can we help the government with the resilience and crisis management. For example, the knowledge and capability we have on sort of system dynamics, for example, looking at risk management issues and looking at how we can actually identify certain risks that the society has when it tries to face a crisis like this, and then looking at the sort of action plan for future. One of the sort of very visible, which was visible for the public, was that we also did some studies together with some of our sort of university partners on trying to demonstrate how the facial masks actually work. How they are not necessary the everyday masks are not to protect yourself, but they are actually you are sort of protecting everybody else from your own aerosols. And we did actually quite nice sort of fluid dynamics modeling of that, and that was actually quite widely distributed in the media. So that was also something that made the public more aware of actually what these type of capabilities can do in order to everyday people when facing a crisis like this. So protective equipment, trying to also help to set up the capability in Finland, and then obviously as this goes on, there are probably looking at the government actually responded quite quickly on also setting up research funding for different types of activities related to, of course, looking at the development medicine and vaccines, but also to some other areas of society, risk management, etc., that we will be starting working after the summer holidays. So that, in a nutshell, was what has been happening here in Finland.
Thank you, Jussi. Frédéric?
Okay, bon dia, boa tarde, here from Geneva. Okay, and then just you know that CERN is a European Organization for Nuclear Research. We are located close to Geneva, and we install on the two countries, France and Switzerland. Our main goal is to develop, install, and operate large accelerators and detectors. And to say that normally at CERN, on CERN sites, we are between 8,000 to 10,000 people, more or less 2,500 staff, 1,500 fellows, technical students, and around also between 1,000, 1,500 contractors, and many users, and getting close to 10,000 people on the CERN site. We had to face this management of the COVID crisis, what we declare in 3 stages. First stages we call the stage 1, was when the virus was far from CERN, but already from 20th of January we prepare the things to monitor the situation, to follow the general recommendation from our 2 host states. We really set initially a website dedicated for that, and we start also from the beginning of February to have a sanitary measure and physical distancing as a recommendation. We start to limit all the travel restriction to risk zone, and we put at this time only vulnerable people on telework, and putting also people in quarantine coming from risk zone. And we stop all the guide tours at CERN. After that, when we called stage 2, and mid-March, 9th of March, the virus was developing in Italy, then close to CERN, and starting in France. And we had our first case at CERN, and we had a crisis management team was activated, and we had put in place a COVID-19 response team. What it is more or less 30 people looking and doing that. Our main goal was to avoid wide circulation and to reduce as possible all the people on site. We stop all the official travel of CERN. We really limit the access on site, and we stop all the meeting in person, and we limit it to really essential things with a 2-meter distance, tracing attendance. And we stop all these visits at CERN. After that, we really declare a lockdown. So to say, we had 1 week to put all our equipment in safe mode. You have to imagine that we were in a long shutdown. We had more than between 1,000 to 2,000 people working down in the tunnels and so on. In 1 week, we stop activity. We put in safe mode all the things. And we passed to, as I said, 10,000 people to 300 people on site, only for security, with security and safety. And we put all the other personnel on telework, if was compatible with their activity. Majority was compatible. And for the other, we had remunerated special leaves, was more or less 100 people. I think it was important, and thanks to a solid IT grid developed for the machine, we maintain all operational support, and we had a very strong thing for remote work. I think the teleworking at the end was very successful, thanks to this IT infrastructure and assistance. We had at the given time more than 20,000 daily access to the video conferencing and tools, as we are doing today with different tools. We continue to have all the remote meetings, seminar, colloquia, training session, and also for all the physicists, data analysis in remote. Okay, as we put soon we put the people in safe mode, we start to develop a plan for gradual and flexible restart, and we do that. And now we restart the things from 18th of May, what was a T0, and we are increasing the number of persons by 500 per week, to hoping to restart at the full speed end of September, beginning of October. Obviously, we have to follow, we have to look how the evolution will be. Then in summary, I will say in a few words that our highest priority was to protect the health of CERN personnel and everyone on the site, but taking effective measures proportionate to the risk, allowing the continuation of the safe operation of the facility and keeping the CERN running as far as possible with a massive teleworking thanks to a solid and stable IT network and tools. Thank you.
Thank you, Frédéric. Roque?
Okay.
Com certeza, com certeza.
Okay, well, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We are here at the Brazilian Center for Research on Energy and Materials, or in Portuguese, CNPEM. And we are composed of, let's say, 4 main labs. The synchrotron lab, where everything started 33 years ago. The biosciences lab, biorenewables, and the nanotechnology lab. We have around 1,100 people, including students, PhD, postdocs, and contractors, and around 660 in-house personnel, researchers, technicians, etc. As all the other places, when the crisis started, we went on remote operation for what was possible, but we kept some relevant research directly connected to the COVID, let's say, effort. Throughout these years, we have developed some platforms with the support from the federal government. So one of the questions was the importance of the federal government support, and it was crucial because through the Ministry of Science and Technology, we have managed to build not only the synchrotron, but establish a lot of platforms to work on strategic problems of the country on health, energy, environment, etc. So one of the areas that we have been working throughout these years is on drug development. So we understand this is an important issue for any country, and for Brazil in particular. So we were developing that. So very quickly, we could redirect all those efforts to actually try to work on repurposing, drug repurposing, because we understood was as the fastest possible way to actually find, let's say, something antiviral drugs. So we had support also from this research from the Ministry of Science and Technology. They started a network, a viral network, or rede vírus as they called, and gave support to different groups in the country for vaccines, for diagnostics, for clinical tests, and one of them was drug development. And so we received also support for that. We very quickly used our facilities on virtual screening of potential drugs, biochemical assays, cellular assays, high throughput screening, etc., to try to find. So we were, let's say, seeking through databases of known drugs, possible small molecules that could actually be antiviral. And we have managed to find some and do what we call preclinical tests. So we could test on bioassays, and then we could test with cells infected with the virus, with a partnership with Unicamp. And this is something that we've been continuing. We have actually transferred one potential drug to the ministry to actually go to the clinical stage. We don't take care of that here at CNPEM, but we continue these efforts that we think are very important. We also have, because we have the largest, let's say, electron microscopy park in the country, and with cryomicroscopes as well. And we have a very well established throughout these years a structural molecular biology group that can go all the way from, let's say, the genome of a specific protein all the way to crystals. We have actually started to do that for the proteins of the virus, and some of them are already taken to the microscopes, and we're starting to actually analyze the first data for their structures. And also synchrotron research is directly connected. One of them, let's say, is a very broad equipment, also has in its core an accelerator, an electron accelerator. And it's used quite a lot for molecular crystallography. So to understand the 3D structure of the proteins, and in particular, in this case, the proteins of the virus. And we are in the middle of, let's say, a shutdown of our old machine and the commissioning of our new machine. and we were, let's say, assembling the first beamlines. So when the crisis came, we directed all the efforts from our technical groups to try to finish as fast as possible our structural molecular biology beamline. It's functional now, not of course at the plan with all the let's say things that will be possible when you have it fully operational and with all the performance that we plan, but it will be operational. We're finalizing some tests, and we hope we'll be able in 1 or 2 weeks to start doing experiments with crystals from proteins of the virus. So in summary, because we are a national center and have been throughout the past, let's say, decades, developing all these techniques and infrastructure, we could very quickly redirect all our efforts to actually support the research of the country, not only through what the ministry wants, but also will support very quickly all the universities and other groups through our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, José Roque. So the next question is related to what are the particular capabilities of each of the institutions you direct. In different ways, all of them have given important contributions to the development of applied technologies globally or regionally. Could you please share a bit of the main deliverables to society coming from the research done in your institutions, not only in the pandemic context, and how the work developed in partnership with industry was relevant for the results? You see?
Thank you. That is a very tall order to be answered in 5 minutes. Let me take an example of actually. So basically, we work in applied research, which means that we are sort of taking things from lab through piloting and basically trying to cross that valley of death when it comes to, especially when it comes to the technical uncertainty of a certain solution. And one of our main capabilities actually is in the piloting phase, which is quite expensive to do for the companies. They don't necessarily have the resources or the competence to do it, and so we sort of build and maintain open access pilots. And I will give an example of which actually has a touch point on Brazil too, and it's on advanced biomaterials. And obviously, I mean, Finland is a country where there is nothing but forests and few people scattered around the forests. So obviously, that's something that there's a big national interest to do, and so do also other nations that have abundant natural resources like Brazil. And then try to figure out how to increase the value and the use of these natural resources. What we've done, especially here in Finland, and which also then touches the Brazilian perspective, are sort of cellulose products. I have 2 examples actually. The one way for us to sort of make an impact is to develop technology and help the industries then to take onboarding that technology, take that on board, and we do it actually on sort of 2 levels. The first level where we do it is typically in a larger consortium where there's still a lot of uncertainty about the technology itself. So we gather a large consortium of companies. We have an example now here in Finland where we have 55 companies working on a specific biomaterial technology, including 3 Brazilian companies, Suzano, Klabin, and Ibema, that are part of the consortium. We have partners from Asia, basically from all the continents, where we're still working on sort of a non-commercial ground where everybody's actually benefiting from the fact that they're working together in order to advance the technology as such. Once we get to a certain point, then we can start working with the companies one-on-one to really help them to build their own technology capability and help them to build business from that technology. And one way of doing it also is we have several spin-offs. One of the spin-offs is actually again in the same area, working on probably the most environmentally beneficial textile fiber in the world. And there again, one of the I think Suzano again is actually one of the shareholders in that company. So it's also to show that even though we are a Finnish research institute, actually about half of our revenue comes from abroad. Just sort of highlighting also the sort of the international nature of research and what we do. So you have to be good in something in order to sort of gain the interest of these type of companies. So these are a couple of sort of interesting examples. One also which is sort of gaining traction a lot right now is trying to find more environmentally friendly ways of or sort of alternative ways of producing proteins for human consumption. And there we are working on both startups, international startups. We also have one startup of our own, just an example where we are producing protein from CO2 and sunlight through solar energy. It's called Solar Foods. Just to tell that these are basically what we are working on is that we are trying to find answers to the biggest problems that the society has right now. So there are certain challenges that we are facing. We are trying to now find the sort of the spot where the challenge presents an opportunity for a company, somebody to make money, and also where you can say that actually need the latest in science, the latest in research in order to solve that specific challenge. That in a
yeah, I got to learn about initiatives to which we may speak later on and see how we may interact. Frédéric?
Yes. Okay, I want to say that for the pandemic, first, the 18,000 members of CERN community felt that their technologies, expertise could be used in the collective fight against COVID-19. Therefore, at the end of March, the CERN Directorate decided to set a group called CERN Against COVID. And the goal was to deploy CERN resources and competence to contribute to the fight against the pandemic and to ensure effective and well-coordinated action, working closely with experts in healthcare, drug development, epidemiology, emergency response, so that to maximize the impact of the organization contribution. We establish a link with local hospital, emergency service. We start dialogue with experts of the WHO, World Health Organization, also the EMBL, European Molecular Biology Organization, European Bioinformatics Institute. Then we receive hundreds of proposals from all the community. And it was to proposal range from local activities to international design, calculation, simulation activities. I have no time to describe all the things. I will say that we have local activities as we produce more than 10,000 liters of hydroalcoholic solution, thanks to our chemistry workshop. And these were distributed to the fire brigade in France and in Switzerland. Also, we use our 3D facility printing workshop to have face shield, also and face shield, yes. And we look at also about the vast computing power we had at CERN to use to contribute for the search for the vaccine, and how we could boost the search for such vaccine. We have all our standard tools, such simulation, big data analysis, machine learning, deep learning, are being implemented for this vaccine situation. But I want to take one example, is the ventilators. We had an equipe from one experiment, LHCb, one of the 4 LHC experiments, looking at a ventilator with the technology developed to supply and control the flow of gas in the detector could be adapted and to help patients suffering with COVID-19. And this, we had contact with medical things. It was to develop this what's called high energy ventilator, HEV, and to be used for treat patients with a mild form of the disease. And this was very important things, and the design we complies with the hospital standard and supports the most requested ventilator operation mode. And I think I want to say that we had the first prototype at the end of March, and now this ventilator is based on components that are simple, inexpensive to source, and can be powered by battery, solar panel, and so on. This is an original development we want to do that. And I would like to point out that the LHCb group from Universidad Federal de Rio de Janeiro have been involved in this development. And we are working also with local actors to adapt and the operation of these things. Okay, in conclusion of this answer, I will develop later about other domain, but I want to say that we have been stimulated by the enthusiasm of the physics community to contribute against the COVID-19 pandemic. Many ideas from the deployment of source of powerful computing, engineering, technical resource, and also ideas to assist the local effort through logistical emergency response support. For me, is a great demonstration of what a scientific community used to work together for accelerator detector can do, an example of the transfer of knowledge and technology from basic science to the society. Thank you.
Thank you, José Roque.
Okay. Regarding society as a whole or impact, first of all, CNPEM as a national lab with unique facilities such as the synchrotron, the only one in the country, for device and materials, and then including a pilot plant for scale up of biomass research. We have a direct deliverable to society through the access to these equipment. So we support the whole science and technology and innovation system of the country through open access to these unique facilities, including many companies that have been using these equipment: Petrobras, Mali, Embraer, some Brazilian companies, some other companies such as Eli Lilly, regarding some biotechnology, sugarcane mills and biorefineries, an important issue for the country, Axê, Centroflora, etc., Embraer, many companies. So we also have an important role in training both people from the academics as well as from the companies to use this facility. So we have a regular, let's say, interaction with the let's say, science and technology system through these things. But also through our internal research, we address relevant problems to the country and to the world. For example, we have already mentioned the drug development research that we do here, be them related to small molecules or to biological drugs, for example, with monoclonal antibodies, which are very important these days for cancer treatment. In particular, we have been structuring a platform for systematic search of small molecules from distinct biomes of Brazil, which is important if we look at the relevance of the Brazilian biodiversity and its potential role in the future, not only of the country, but in the world as a whole. And thanks to that, we have managed, as I have described previously, to actually quickly redirect these efforts to actually work on drugs for the COVID. We also have, as in Finland, or as it was mentioned, structuring an industrial biotechnology platform, and where we can customize the development or optimization of enzymes and microorganisms to address different bioprocesses, be them related to renewable energy sector. That's how this actually lab started for sugarcane, obtaining alcohol from sugarcane bagasse, but be them efforts in other sectors like food sectors or other areas that can actually use this biotechnology. So we can go from the optimization of the organisms all the way to actually do experiments or tests in our scalable pilot plant. We also understand the importance of deepening the scientific knowledge, and then we can use all the equipment that we have here, all the singular equipments to understand the, let's say, the atomic structure of the different materials, to understand how to actually extract, let's say, in the future, materials and chemicals, not only energy from the biomass. So is the use of biomass in a broader sense. And this is in particular an area, all this bioscience and biotechnology, that we are an Embrapa center. Embrapa is an organization connected to the Ministry of Science and Technology that actually tries to connect industry and, let's say, labs, be academic or lab like us, a national lab like us, and we are Embrapa center to these fields. We also have been working on the nanotechnology, which is a very important area for society, be them for the regulatory issues that will actually impact industry, but also the concerns of society related to the usage of nanomaterials. And also have been more recently developing work on renewable energy connected to solar energy, artificial photosynthesis, trying to understand role of distinct materials that can actually impact these areas. All these fields, of course, are directly connected to societal problems, and all of them have been dealt with in close partnership with industries. We have a dedicated area of innovation here as Envie, and they try to actively seek to strengthen this partnership with the industrial sectors. Finally, an extremely relevant example is connected to development and production of a variety of systems and components of the Sirius accelerator. This is similar to what Fred has mentioned, the impact of connecting of high-tech equipment like a synchrotron and the impact it has on the industry of the country. We have been interacting with many small, medium, and large companies, some of them even as startups. For example, in X-ray detectors, we have actually first joined a CERN consortium. So the importance of having a lab like CERN that develops detectors actually to understand the basics of let's say of the universe, what makes us what we are, but at the same time you can transfer this to detectors that will have an impact in health, and in our case a detector that will impact a lab like the synchrotron, where absolutely any field of research can actually do research. And in particular, FAPESP has also been a supporter of all these developments to specific programs. So I'm glad to say that throughout these efforts, 85% of all the money that was spent in the construction of Sirius was actually spent in Brazil through all these companies that were, they didn't have before the capability to actually produce these equipments, and now they do have, and it can even eventually compete to sell these equipments abroad.
Thank you,
I think that
the third question we have is, what do you all expect for years to come? What will be the main shifts in science and technology in terms of investment and global cooperation in the post-pandemic time? Any bets on innovation trends? What will be your priorities? You see?
All right, thank you. I think what we're seeing, and then this also touches upon on some of the priorities that we are seeing, also national priorities and also our priorities, are looking at some of the largest sort of societal issues. So we have to start looking at the sort of from a challenge point of view. Obviously, low carbon, anything is one of the sort of the priorities, and also looking at the sort of the resource, I would say resource sufficiency, looking at how can we actually make sure that we have materials for the future. And what is the trend here is looking at it. It's not only a technological issue, obviously, but it also blends a lot with the societal issues. It blends with policies. So we need to start looking at more on the interplay between the science, technology, and policies. Also, from the sort of development point of view, we are looking at systems. And then we are starting looking at not only how the components of the system or the parts of the system are compatible with the system and vice versa. So we have to start having this interplay between looking at what is the big picture that we want to start developing, and how do these little parts fit into that. As a practical example, I would say that the design of different, for example, products will become much more crucial in the future, because they need to be designed in a way that they can be reused, recycled, etc., so you can keep the materials longer in play. Then, of course, there are certain sort of technological challenges and issues that will definitely be high in interest. Obviously, quantum computing is one of them. Also, another interesting one is the interplay between biology and engineering. Obviously, we have the sort of synthetic biology, which is sort of like engineering applied to biology, but then what we're also starting to see is what if we start applying biology to engineering, and start using sort of biology as an inspiration for systems, for products, for materials, etc. So that is one of the sort of interesting areas where I see that where we are going, and also something that we also trying to see that how far we can go in that area. When it comes to the difficult question of how does actually the sort of international relations when it comes to science, obviously COVID has shown us that if there's a need, if there's a must, there can be a very rapid response, international response, everybody working together in order to get phenomenally quick results in a very short time. Let's just hope that this spirit will continue also in the future, because all the issues that we're facing are global in nature. We need to come up with solutions fast, so we cannot afford isolating ourselves and just sort of playing in our own little sandbox. We need to continue and expand the science to be an international and sort of open arena where we can come up with solutions quicker than what we've used to so far.
Thank you, Jussi. Frédéric?
Yes, I appreciate the intervention of Jussi. I will be in the same line. I think science with large project is totally very important for joining institute and university to work together. As you know, our flagship project at CERN is LHC, 27-kilometer circumference accelerator put in operation in 2010. It will run up to 2040 with 4 large experiments. These large experiments are large collaboration up to 4,000 physicists, 100 of nationality. And I'd like to say that with strong participation of Brazilian university and institute. And I want to say, to mention, for example, an excellent success story in São Paulo with FAPESP, with supporting USP and Universidad de São Paulo and Unicamp to develop electronics for sanitators. LHC was an investment of more or less $5 billion. The investment was made in the industry, in the member state and beyond, generating immediate financial return, but also long-term benefits in terms of knowledge transfer and technology development. And all this technology are transferring in, for example, medical application with MRI, PET, hadron therapy, in the domain of energy with the use of superconductivity, ultra vacuum, transmutation of waste in space also with radiation to electronics. In terms of accelerator, we have 30,000 accelerators in the world, less than 200 for fundamental research. One important domain, it was mentioned by Jose, is the synchrotron light accelerator, where Sirius is a unique example, and Jose is speaking better than me on this research and spin-off. But for me, Sirius is a nice example of the value of sustained investment in building scientific infrastructure. I think, as Jussi said, the crisis has shown in many countries, unfortunately not all, the return of science. We have seen the formation of scientific committees to provide information to political decision makers. There is, for me, a great expectation from science and scientists for the rapid search for the vaccine, for example, requires many means ranging from simulation, processing of large data, test platform, data analysis. International organization is very important and crucial for this type of research. I think after the COVID, there will certainly be a tendency to reorient science towards the medical field after the crisis. I think medical development are very important and must be supported. However, I think that will be a mistake to do only this domain, because we don't know what will be the next crisis. It could be a new pandemic, a new sanitary crisis, but could be also the climate crisis, energy crisis, cyber attack. I think for me, it's very important to invest heavily in science, in particular in fundamental science, which in past has demonstrated interest not only for knowledge, but also in the development of new technologies. You know, for example, that web was born at CERN, and CERN is web is a product of fundamental science. It is also true for other technology as medical energy and so on. Then for CERN, my expectation is to now to continue to have support for our member state and associate member state. In parentheses, I will say that I hope that Brazil will join the CERN family soon as associate member state. and now to look at what could be the next machine after LHC at the horizon 2040, and to put everybody together to define this new machine. I'm really believe that fundamental scientific research is a true pacemaker for humankind, but also a peacemaker, because a peacemaker uniting people from different countries and cultures. I'm convinced that the large structure and challenging projects are the engine of innovation for the industry and training also young generation in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'd like to conclude this question recalling the quote of Bernardo Hosset, that is a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1947. There is no applied science if there is no science to apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Frédéric. José Roque?
Okay, well, I will not repeat all the excellent statements that were made before me. So I'd like to emphasize a few points that they made. One, that it was clear through this pandemic that the world is completely interconnected. So there is no such a thing as a problem of a specific region. We have problems that are of the whole world. So as Frédéric said, biology and medicine will be an important thing, but as you see mentioned, so the energy problem, the environment problem, and all these questions also need to be addressed. Also, we saw the importance of remote, let's say, work and the remote interaction. As Fred said, CERN has a history of doing this because it has thousands of people all over the world interacting on experiments. So, as he said, the investments in a specific area, such as particle physics, was very important and impacting the world now where it's needed. So it's clear the relevance of investing in science as a whole. You see mentioned the relevance of biology to engineering. I think is the interconnection, also engineering and biology. For example, I see as also a very important area in the future, printing organs. So for example, the capability of managing cellular, let's say, material and being able to print a heart, as we are seeing happening, or printing organs, I think would be also an important area, maybe not mentioned before. And computational capability, it was mentioned quantum computing as an important thing, but as a whole, Fred mentioned the importance of machine learning and all the computer capability that CERN needed and was redirected to actually trying to make simulations regarding the virus now. So it was clear that this will be important things in the future. We here at CNPEM will reinforce, of course, our research in virus and microbiology. I think it's clear that we need to understand in a deeper level how and why viruses work the way they do, so we can try to be even faster to let's say, find solutions when the next pandemic happens. But I think that we will have to also have a lot of developments on prevention. So how can we actually prevent something like that from happening? And but it was clear, I think, to everybody, and maybe in Brazil even more so, the importance of science to solve the problems that the world has. I think it's clear, and I agree completely with Fred. There is no such thing as basic science or applied science. There are problems that need to be solved, and these problems will require some basic knowledge at some points, but then will require eventually more applied things. But they will, once you start to do the applications, you see that you need to develop a more basic understanding of things, and so they sort of reinforce each other. So it would be a mistake to think that everything is applied because we have all this basic knowledge here. Yeah, no, we don't. And we see this in the virus. I think there are lots of basic, very basic questions regarding how the virus sequesters given cells, how do they enter? And of course, this will have an impact on applications as well. Regarding also, how can the countries prepare? I think education is the key word. We see that we need to have people that will be prepared for the new technologies that are happening faster and faster. So we need to prepare our personnel to actually be able to learn and readapt as fast as the new, let's say, technologies are appearing. So this will be a new trend. And I think we'll see more and more also remote learning or things like that. So I think this is also, we have to invest on how to do this in a very, let's say, efficient way, because I think a lot of activities will be more and more remote. I think those are some thoughts, and we can actually discuss more later on.
Thank you, José Roque. I would like now to go to some questions of the audience, and the one I chose here to start with UC is, it was posed to the Brazilian industry, but I will rephrase it to the Finnish industry and make it also to the parallels, because industry anywhere would have a similar challenge. And the question is how to prepare the Finnish Brazilian industry workforce to this scenario. What is fundamental? What is about conjunctural? And what must be structural in the human resource preparation? You see?
So just trying to clarify the question is, but really to the scenario where we'd be working together, I guess. I think we actually we've been working together actually for quite a few years. We actually used to have a research team down in Sao Paulo for quite a few years actually. So at least in our case, we found that there seems to be, I'm not sure if it requires any specific training per se, as long as we sort of both are clear on what do we actually are after in the collaboration. As I said, we are used to working with different cultures. We have clients from every continent. But really, I guess then it comes to the how do you work with Finns, maybe, which is a bit more cultural, and obviously we are a bit not necessarily, we're sort of let's forget it. I mean, this gets a bit sort of a humoristic in a way, but let's forget the chit chat. Let's get straight to the business. We are very patient listeners. So you might get the sort of impression that we are sort of not interested or not active enough. But that's just the way we are. So it's basically certain cultural differences. But I haven't really actually, when we working with for example with Brazilians, I don't think we have had any issues. And I said we're constantly working with different cultures. So I don't think it requires any specific training per se. It's really that we are sort of clear what we want. We are sort of clear in communication and sort of proceeding towards that goal. Excellent. I don't know if that was a clear enough answer for.
Yeah, for me it was, and given my recent incumbency on this position, I look forward to strong interaction with Finnish agencies. We had in the past a strong interaction with the Academy of Finland, and also via the so-called transatlantic platform on social innovation, a number of projects that funded collaboration between Brazilians and Finnish scholars. So I really look forward to meet you again. Frederick and José Roque, assuming this is not the last outbreak, is there any initiative addressed to deploy better computational models to predict evolution of future outbreaks, given the strong computational capabilities you do have? Are you considering any movement on that, Frederick?
You're mute, Fred.
Sorry, yes, I was mute. There was some noise. Okay, then as I said, we use our really large computer power to help for this pandemic. I think now we can use. We are continuing to work with the WHO and so on. But as I said, we don't know what will be the next one. And once again, what is important, I think, was said also by Jussi, what is important is the flexibility to train people, to have young people trained in technology, innovation, and so on, and to be flexible. I think yes, we have to develop computer power and to look at that and to have the tool. But I think we have the tool. For me, the more important is the flexibility to be ready to address any crisis that will come. And I think it was said already that working together definitely is crucial, because now we are living in the same planet, and you can see with this pandemic, when it's starting in the corner of the planet, it will go everywhere. I'm convinced that the other crises, climate, energy, cyber attack, anything will be global. And we are ready to be more and more global and to have more and more global research. I think it's not the time to have our own research per country, per department, and so on, but to be global. And I think this is really the things. And to also to show to our young people that the world is not only a simulation. It's important to have computer tools and so on, but also is technology, is hardware, and we have to train people to hardware. And we need a lot of industry and also a small size industry working in a technology in hardware to be ready to address different things. But I will be very large in things, and I said also in my previous question, fundamental research is really developing this kind of global technology, putting all together in terms of institute, university, and industry.
Zerro?
Okay. Well, first, concerning the computer modeling, I think one thing that we have seen, well, besides what has been said already, the need of capabilities and training, as I had mentioned, and Fred also said, the flexibility in the training of the people. And we saw also that we need to develop ways to have better inputs to these models. As we say in computer modeling, garbage in, garbage out. What we need is maybe to have better ways of testing that are very cheap and reliable. So when something like that happens, we can very quickly start feeding these models with good data. I think we might even have, let's say, a good mathematics. We have fantastic computers, but if we don't have the good inputs, what we get at the end will not be very reliable to actually make predictions and take political decisions. So I think diagnostics, it was clear that it's something that we need to develop. Cheap, reliable diagnostics. And regarding also then what was said of this world interaction, I think it's completely clear to me that we need to define some problems that are of world interest and try to work together actually to solve them. Not only regarding this pandemic and as we're discussing here, but all the important issues that we have discussed so far. And for example, if you take this computer modeling thing, CERN was a very pioneering in setting up, let's say, networks all over the world to actually analyze their huge amounts of data. We see that we are in many areas needing to actually have access to deal with large amounts of data. And this shows the importance of investing in a specific area, again, like particle physics, will have an impact on other fields. And for example, one of them that I think will be very important in the future, we haven't mentioned, is superconductivity. CERN is pushing a lot the development of superconducting materials. And if we, and this of course has an impact on technology, on how to develop, weld, and manufacture all these materials, but also will force basic science to actually try to find new materials that will be able to be superconducted higher and higher, and temperatures maybe as we dream of at ambient temperature. If we manage to do that, if we manage eventually to do that, this will have a huge, fantastic impact on electricity transmission and transportation and many other areas. So we can see that, again, I wouldn't develop on basic science and applied science. We have a need of having high energy to understand the ultimate structure of the universe. To actually do this, you need to have a very applied thing, like very high field, high magnetic fields based on superconductors. And then we need to develop a lot of technology, and eventually this will lead to the need to understand some basic physics, and then so on and so forth. So that's why I think it's important for society to understand everything is a network. It's not that we'll see, oh, okay, you have everything ready, let's simply transfer technology to industry and solve our problems. It doesn't work like that. So, because if we didn't have personnel ready to actually address some of the basic issues by training them, whenever the need comes, you won't have the workforce ready to actually address those issues. As I say on the pandemics, if we didn't have the country ready, what we're going to do? Wait for 10 years to actually train postdocs, PhDs, students, and prepare the infrastructure for that? Either we have them or we don't. And that's the issue regarding science. You need to have constant support, even if you don't see exactly at a given point why it would be important, quote unquote. You never know when the next crisis will be, and you never know exactly what kind of, let's say, technology or knowledge you need. So I think those are some of the thoughts that I have on this.
Thank you, José Roque. I would like to conclude by thanking you the excellent thoughts and considerations given by UC, Frederic, and José Roque, and also from the interest and questions from the audience. I think to conclude and to link with the opening, the initial question, or this session as a whole, had to deal with why investments in innovation will be so important. And the point to consider there is investment. When we consider an investment, it's not something you're doing for tomorrow. It's something you're doing for a long time frame, for life, let's say. And that's the main concept I think we all spoke about here. It's maybe relevant for tomorrow, but will definitely be relevant for the long term. Investment, it's something that must be done with a time frame which is longer than the immediate and the visible need. So with that, once again, I would like to thank you all for participating on this event. And thank you for Confederação Nacional da Indústria and Mobilização Empresarial pela Inovação, or going in English, the National Industry Confederation and the Entrepreneurial Mobilization for Innovation, for having us together with you today. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.